we talk about building, right? Like that's what everybody's doing in the space. We're just building. It's hard to lift your head up and see like where you've been and where you're going. And honestly, that's what we've been focused on this year so far, has been locking in the execution teams so that the leaders in the company can look up and look around and see where we're going and start to redirect, to get to a place where like, if we can see it and we can feel it, then others, will see it in a big way.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of Andrew Asks How podcast. Today with me, I have Jeff. He is the creative director of, depending on who you ask, BAYC or BAYC.
It's
Jeff,
only BAYC. It's only
BAYC. We're confirming that up front. It's only BAYC. Okay. Jeff, what do you say to those that are still here? They've been in the space for 4 years and they call it BAYC.
Well, it hasn't existed for 4 years. Look, Illa on our team calls it BAYC, and he lives and dies by it. He's like, man, it's BAYC. And I'm like, I get that those letters could be pronounced in that way, but it is BAYC.
Okay.
So it just,
we got that cleared up.
Ask Gordon, ask Garga, they'll tell you the same.
We got that cleared up. It's BAYC. Jeff, first and foremost, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast. I've actually interviewed you 4 times, but it's all been on Spaces. I think this is the 5th now. It's nice to see your face and obviously off Spaces, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's funny because, you watch everybody's journey in the space, and, I've seen yours through and so many other people's. And yeah, it's funny because every time we've had a conversation, it's been about something completely different too. It's been like kind of moving around into different things.
It is true.
Yeah.
It is true. Jeff, I want to talk about kind of your off the get-go. Who is Jeff Nichols? Who are you, Jeff? And how did you start in the space before BAYC?
Yeah. So who is Jeff Nichols? That's a very like broad question. I'm a creative director. I've been a creative director now for 20 years. So I identify with that. I started in music, and I didn't start in music, but that's where I got like most of my initial like early work done, and I was in the music industry for a long time. And so, things were changing pretty rapidly in the music industry when I came into it. Technology was really starting to kind of take over in a different way than the industry had ever really understood, and there was like a real convergence of creative and tech. So I kind of gravitated to that place, and I'd sat, in a lot of different roles. In this place where we're like using technology and creativity at the same time. So I think the second part of your question, like what brought me to Web3 or how did I get here, is like, I was in this place of like starting to play with AI, starting to play with VR and AR. I dabbled in crypto a little bit in 2017, and then the pandemic hit, and we were just all like, now what? I was working in live music at the time, and all the shows stopped. And, a friend was like, hey, have you checked your crypto wallet recently? And, I looked at the end of 2020, and I'm like, oh, look, everything's up. And then, another friend was like, how about NFTs? Have you looked into NFTs? And I was just like, I was a right click save guy. I was like, I don't understand why somebody would pay for that, because I could just right click save it. And then somebody explained, the technology and the authentication piece and all of that. And it made a lot of sense. So I just dove right in.
Up to this point, what has been your most memorable and fruitful moment in this space?
This is going to sound probably kind of cheesy because of the role I'm in now at Yuga. But when the apes started to reveal on that Friday night, they hadn't sold out. They had been in pre-order. Not many people had purchased them. They started to reveal, and people started to see how like silly they were, and started having a lot of fun. And then it just took off. I wasn't working for Yuga at the time. I was just like, I had just collected, and I started minting apes. And it was such a special, it was probably the most memorable moment, because I just felt like a kid again. I think all of us felt like a kid again. We'd been locked up for a long time in COVID lockdown, and all of a sudden here are these silly apes, and we're minting them, and everybody's making monkey noises in Clubhouse, and it just turned into like it was like we were playing with GI Joes again, like it just felt like that moment was really, there was like lightning in a bottle in that moment. And then when it sold out, and it sold out like overnight, like very quickly on that Friday, and then on Saturday, that whole weekend, it was just pandemonium of people trying to figure out like, what is this? What's going on? I think that was probably one of the most memorable moments. Another one, though, that was a little bit more personal is when Lindsay sold out her first collection, her first photography collection. We put up a collection for her on OpenSea, and you don't know what's going to happen. And like, it sold out. I think I tweeted about it, and then it sold out like 30 minutes later. It just kind of like blew out. And we were just looking at each other like, holy shit, did that just really happen? And it was this real moment of like, oh, wait a minute. Like, if you build community, you release incredible, artwork or product or whatever, and you're kind of in this thing, like, it will wrap its arms around you, and you will be able to really thrive here. I mean, it was a bull market too, so that helped, but those were probably two, but there've been a lot, like, as I go across the board, like when we sold out Warp Sound stuff, like when that project took off,
I remember this
initially, we had worked for 6 months putting that together, and to see it go the way it went, that when we minted, it's been awesome. It's been weird in the bear. Everybody got weird, but it's been fun.
It's a journey, Jeff. It's definitely a journey. And I do want to ask as well, how did you get hired into BAYC, BAYC, Yuga? How did that happen? Because it seemed like it happened like just so spontaneously that one day I had seen it and I was like, what the heck? I'm like, Jeff from Warp Sound. I'm like, what the heck just happened?
It kind of did happen spontaneously. So, Warp Sound was in the middle of a Series A raise. And what had happened was, we did this collection, but they were really an AI music platform, and working really diligently on building that platform. And I like to say, like, we were too early and then we were too late. Like, it was this weird moment where like nobody knew what we were talking about when we said AI music and virtual artistry. And then all of a sudden, OpenAI and everything. And it was like all anybody would talk about. But we were a small startup in the middle of all of it. And so they were raising Series A funding, the founders. I was executive creative director, but when you're in that mode, it was just like the devs and the engineering team working diligently on building the platform, and then business trying to land funding. There wasn't really a place for me to do anything. And I was kind of like, I want to be able to make a difference. I want to be able to work. I want to be able to do stuff. And so I was just kind of hitting the end of that road, and was like, I don't know what I'm going to go do, but I'd become friends with Gordon Wiley. And Lindsay was like, you should text Gordon and just let him know that you're going to be going off on a next adventure. So I hit him and I was just like, hey, like, I'm in this moment. I'm probably going to go do something else. And if I do, I'll get locked up for a couple of years. We've talked about me working on BAYC stuff for a long time now. This is probably the moment that we could make that happen. And he's like, talk to Garga, talk to Figgy, boom, boom, boom. Next thing we know, I'm in-house. Helping lead on the club side. So I originally came in to help lead the club, and it was like it was kind of broken into like brand and club. And so like I was there to come in and like really put my arms around the club and the membership. But what we learned really quickly from that was like these two things being separate didn't make any sense. They're one and the same. In Web3, it's like the brand is the community, like it's all very intertwined. And so I spent 6 months, working on some great stuff like Made by Apes and Ape Fest Hong Kong, and, putting pieces together. And then in January, it was just like, hey, let's actually make this more holistic. And so I came in as creative director for BAYC proper at that point, and co-lead the brand now. So, it was pretty natural. And it was kind of like, oh, this is happening now. You know, but I mean, that's how my career has been. And I feel really fortunate for that. I know that's not how everybody's story is, but like, if I think back to almost fucking 23, 24 years ago now, when I got into the music industry, it was like, I was at the right place at the right time, met a guy, and next thing I knew I was on the road. And that's so true. It was like, it's kind of the thing of like, I've just been following passion. I've just been showing up, and trying to be as helpful and of service, and then like good shit has happened,
What is your day-to-day function for being creative director for BAYC? What is your day-to-day function?
Yeah, I mean, I'm overseeing everything that's happening, everything that's coming out in terms of creative content output, right? So you're seeing, marketing stuff around the 3D avatars, or you're seeing, ticketing stuff come out for 8Fest, or you're seeing 8Fest proper, or merchandise lines, or whatever. I'm overseeing all of that stuff, and so some of it I'm creating, most of it I'm working with our teams, and they're creating, and we're doing it super collaboratively. So that's one side of the coin, and then the other side, that's more the creative director piece, and then the other side is more strategy on the brand management side. So I'm partnered with Dave Evans. Dave is an incredible producer, incredible sort of business mind, comes from like startup and agency world. So he oversees production and business, and then I'm overseeing creative and strategy, and we kind of meet together in the middle. So that strategy looks like, what's our vision moving forward? How are we engaging with brands? How are we bringing the community along with the brands? How are we doing things that can help like create the legacy of Bored Ape Yacht Club, the brand that the community is part of. So it's really fulfilling, because it scratches both of the itches. When I ran a creative agency for 10 years, and I wore multiple hats there, from CEO, executive producer, and executive creative director. And so being able to do all those things, like left brain, right brain, that's where I function best. And this has given me the opportunity to like really, really hone that. Now I'll say the other part of this is like Greg, Garga and Gordon are deeply involved. And so it's been such a fun ride, like working with these guys on a daily basis, and having Garga come back in and really push things. So all the creative and strategy work that we're doing kind of comes up to them, and then they'll have like a creative spark, and you're like, oh shit, that's amazing.
What has been the internal culture shift / magic from Daniel back to Garga? What has been both of their leadership styles as well as the internal cultures? I think culture from the community mimics the brand internally. So what's that been like under both of these fine gentlemen? And they're great guys in their own respects, of course.
Yeah, Daniel was great. I mean, and I met Daniel before I worked at Yuga at a punks event down at Consensus, actually. And Spicy, we were at a party, and it might have actually, was it? I don't know. I can't remember if it was an ape or a punk event, but
too many parties.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. But Spicy was like, hey, Jeff and Lindsay, you should meet Daniel. Daniel's coming to be CEO. And we spent 30 minutes rapping there. And he didn't have to do that with me. And what I learned about him, because at the time I was just a holder, granted, I, knew Wiley and had been on the podcast and was doing stuff. But what I learned about him was he did that constantly. That was his thing. It was like spend time with the community and actually like hear the feedback and take the feedback in and take it to heart. And so Daniel was really, really strong in a lot of areas, and operationally, bringing some like business acumen to what we were doing, bringing some structure. At the same time, he was coming from Web 2. And as much as we like to say, those skills are transferable, like they are to a point. Yeah. And so there's a point, you can call it Web 2.5, you're not quite at Web 3. There's like things that are just like completely fucking upside down. Degens operate in a very different way. Community members who feel a part of something operate in a very different way. And so there's a way that you communicate. There's a way that you roll things out. There's a transparency. There's a quickness. All of those things were kind of missing. And again, I don't think that that's Daniel's fault. I think it was a blind spot. And he did a lot of work. We worked with him a lot to fill that blind spot. And it just didn't quite work. And as soon as Garga stepped back into the seat, the difference was apparent immediately, both internally and externally. And the major difference was just the way he was able to speak directly to the community and fill them in on what's going on, and drive like a DGen, like somebody who is just like, yeah, shoulder to shoulder, let's go. The other interesting thing is, Garga learned a lot, I think, over the course of the past few years. Being the founder who, was still involved in everything. Because, look, Wiley had to back off with his heart condition. And so Garga never took a day off. He was there in the trenches every single day. But I think he learned a hell of a lot about running a company and what he wanted to see out of running a company. And I think he just hit a point where it was like, I think I'm ready to pick these reins back up. And that's really what it was. We were steering the ship, and all of a sudden, we were getting it to head in the right direction after some missteps. And then he was like, let's go faster. I want to go faster. And so now you look at what he's doing and you look at how fast he's going. He's got a real plan for like turning that ship quickly and heading in the right direction, And the thing is about what Garga is doing now is it's like there is a very clear vision from him, and there are very clear steps that he's taking, and there's not a lot of hemming and hawing about stuff. It's like, yep, go, and that changes the dynamic, because then everybody feels like
speed. Speed.
It's speed, and there's a different level of like accountability and autonomy that happens within the team, because they're like, yeah, we're aligned. We're constantly aligning, and we can just run, So yeah, it's been, I loved working with Daniel, really respect him. Absolutely love
different skill sets, Jeff. It's different skill sets, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. Yeah. But when Daniel had, stepped down and Gar came out with the announcement that, he was taking over, a lot of the community, and not just the apes, but I think at scale, the Web3 community was kind of bashing Daniel. And I was like, if you guys look back in time, the Hong Kong, the collab with, who was now Jeff? The collab with BAYC was Daniel, right?
Yeah.
Like, Daniel did things that Respect for the Wiley and Garga couldn't do because they hadn't had that relationship. Daniel makes a quick phone call. These things get done for the benefit of the brand, and people are like, nah, F down. I'm like, dude, these things you guys were excited about was Daniel.
It's always the team. Like, how does the team work together, and what are the skill sets that you're bringing? And you're absolutely right. Like, Daniel was able to pick up the phone and make certain calls that, frankly, we weren't able to make,
Yeah.
So, BAYC did come out of, like, BAYC was like, we had been trying to put something together for a while, both sides, and we just couldn't, it couldn't, come together.
Yeah.
And Daniel picked up the phone because there was a board member that he knew, or it was shared or whatever. And as soon as he had that conversation, it was like, oh, we're on. And here we go, right? And we did BAYC, and then we've got a second drop coming. So it's like, different skill sets, and different. Like, here's the thing: I'm a pretty firm believer in whether it's business, whether it's personal, like whatever. Things are going to happen the way that they're going to happen. Like, there's very little that we think we have a lot of control over things, but there's very little that we actually have control over beyond like our own reactions to things. We can plan and we can put things together and we can do whatever we're going to do, but like the universe is going to do what it does.
Correct.
And so, like Daniel stepping in when he stepped in, Nicole stepping in when she stepped in, Garga stepping back in when he stepped back in, like those things are probably supposed to have happened in the way that they happened. I don't know, I don't, and now, we're better for having Daniel as CEO.
I agree with that as well. Yeah. Daniel is one of the guys that you would preach about at business school that comes in through networking and connections, makes that phone call, gets that thing done. Now, because of that, he's a quote unquote A player, which I believe he is. And I think that was good of Daniel to do that. Jeff, if I can ask, what is Daniel's still role with Yuga BAYC at this current moment?
There's none. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. I think he's on as, I don't know for sure. I think he's on as an advisor. Like, he has said, if you guys ever need anything, I'm here. So, there's no bad blood at all. And he's like, he still rocks his ape, but but it was like it was time to make a change. And so I think a lot of people thought that he was still like in the weeds running things. And I mean, the switch was pretty quick, actually. There was handoff stuff, but yeah.
That takes about a couple of weeks, about a month, depending on how much process there is. Yeah. If somebody had to ask you outside of the industry and you had to describe BAYC with only one word, what would you describe it as? Because we're at a point right now, Jeff, you see community members arguing on the timeline what it means to them. Some are like membership, some are saying price go up, some are saying this, that, the third. I met my wife here, whatever. It means different things to different people. I want to know what it means for you.
One word is hard, but if I had to distill it to one word, I would say it's a club.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, because if I say it's a club, you're going to have your version of what a club is. Yeah. Everyone has their version of what a club is, but you can rally around the understanding of that. You know what a car club is, you know what a community club is, like it's a club because we're all together and we're all building this thing. Now, it's much more than that. But one word is hard,
Yeah. I think club is a good term. I think it's started off that way.
And the reason I say that too is if I look around the space, there aren't a lot of like actual communities and actual clubs. There are a lot of people who like to say that they have a community or are in a community, but do you see those people and those communities doing the sorts of things that our club is doing? No, you don't. You don't see like Made by Apes products being made and like put in mass market. You don't see, people organizing their own events on like almost a weekly basis. Like you don't see 35 events pop up that were funded and put on by community members around an official event. It just doesn't happen in any other community. And that's why I think like we are the only true club in the space.
You guys definitely the first. Yeah, it was the one that I think most normies know about. Yeah. Which is interesting. I do, before I get to the conversation of like the actual Clubhouse, because you mentioned club, I do want to take us back. You mentioned the missteps. I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think the missteps were? And how have you guys pivoted to fix them? Usually I would say, like pivoted, like, you fucked it up, but like the you guys say pivot now to make it sound like
better. I mean, we fucked some things up. We did, Yeah. Let's be real. I mean, look, I think that I think there's a lot that goes into taking the kind of swings that Yuga takes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you hit, and many times in most of the startup world, you don't. And it's been interesting because like taking those kind of swings when you've already got like this sort of notoriety and community and investment and whatever, those swings are on display rather than them being like, things that kind of are happening over here that don't hit. And then the one that hits is the one that you see. So we had this organization that was like everyone, like super talented people trying to do the absolute best that they can, kind of operating like a 6-year-old soccer game where like everybody's running to the ball because they all want to do the best thing they can, but like understanding roles and responsibilities was like challenging when you've expanded that fast and tried to do that many things at once. So I think the biggest misstep was trying to do too much. And by trying to do too much, it then meant that certain things suffered because not enough maybe whether it's strategy or insight or time was spent kind of figuring them out. Like Forge, like the people who worked on Forge are incredible. The team that built Forge is incredible. The concept of Forge could have maybe worked. The vote for vote thing and what happened with it just didn't. And it really burned everybody out.
Yeah.
And I think like we lost a lot of steam with that. And look, fast forward, we've taken a pretty direct, stance to say like we want to make games, but we want to make them with people who are professionals at making games because it's such a big mountain to climb. And so that's the Faraway deal. That's why Heavies went over to Faraway. and why LOTM went over to Faraway, because it was like, these are incredible partners. They're really good. This is what they do. Let's work with them to make really great things. We're doing Dookie Dash with them, or, Dookie Dash Unclogged with them. So I think that's one of the things. But again, like, it's tough because when we talk about it, like, there are people on the other side of it that made that, and they put their all into it. And so it's hard when, like, it doesn't hit and there's so much community backlash on something like that.
So Jeff, you think it's like you're trying to do too much too often, where like you have 5 cups, they're all filled at 10%, where you can shrink that in half, get 2 cups at 75. Is that more so the approach now?
Yeah. Now I think look, you've been around for a while too. You get this.
Yeah.
It's like, this was a lot before I came in. Like, when I came in, like, all of this was sort of happening. And so, like, I was kind of like, oh my God, like, you think what's going on, you see the tip of the iceberg, and then you come behind the curtain and you're like, holy shit. Like, I said it on a space the other day, like, there's so much stuff that, like, was almost ready to launch that never will see the light of day. And because it was pulled back for whatever reason, they didn't think it would work. It wasn't ready, whatever. When you have a lot of opportunity in front of you, when you have real blue sky in front of you, it's really easy as a young company to take on more than you can. It just, it's kind of natural. You're like, we have all the, like, incredible ideas, incredible people that all want to do all these incredible things. And you're like, yeah, go, greenlight all of it. And then, like, when you look across it, you're like, oh man, like, the weeds of execution, like, the amount of work that actually needs to go into these things to make sure they're rock solid, to make sure they're secure, to, especially in Web3, like, making sure the security's there and all the audits and everything. It starts to take up a lot more time. And all of a sudden you go like, well, we can't let these balls drop. We've got to take care of all of them. And
then manpower gets allocated and you stretch the team.
Yeah. Exactly. And then the team is stretched thin, and then everybody's kind of burning out. And that was one of the things, Garga came in and was just like, we got to focus, and we got to just cut the extraneous stuff. And as much as, like, an idea might be incredible, or really fun, or we think it's going to be hot, we've committed to these things. We need to get these things done, and then we will move to, new things. It doesn't mean that we're not, like, projecting into the future and working on vision and stuff far off in the future. But it just means that, like, we got to be able to focus on key priorities and staff them the right way. So the BAYC team, I mean, we did, like, full breakdown of everything and, like, reallocated how people were working on things. And I was just talking to Dave yesterday about it. I mean, this week in particular, we felt like, wow, everything's on a track and everything's running down the track. It's the first time we've felt that way in a little while, because we're constantly having to jump over to things and be like, okay, get this one up, and kind of keep juggling. So,
Jeff, can I ask what the team is spending their most time on right now?
Yeah, the BAYC team in particular is spending we have kind of 5 key priorities for the team, but most of the energy right now is going into Ape Fest and Clubhouse. Those are the 2 majors. Made by Apes, the collabs, those are getting a lot of attention as well. A lot of behind the scenes work to bring to market some really fun stuff or some great new tools, but yeah, those are kind of the 4 things that we're really most focused on right now.
And this is gonna be a dumb question, Jeff, but how do you guys prioritize what to focus on? Because you could say, fuck it, let's do this, and this, but how do you guys prioritize? Is it ROI based? Is it community incentive? Is it what looks the best for the brand equity? Like, how do you prioritize, like, what you guys think needs the most manpower, the most attentiveness to?
Yeah, good question. It's a mix of things. Like, it's kind of what you were just alluding to. It's like community engagement, like not even engagement. That's a shitty word. That's like a Web2 word. It's like, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel right. Yeah. It feels gross. It's like, is the community benefiting from this in some way? Are we empowering the community in some way? Are we able to create something that can make some profit to keep the business running? Right.
Yeah.
Those 2 things are sometimes at odds, but when we can align the 2, that's when we really kind of run at something. It's great for the community. Like, it gives people something really, really special. And it can make some money, for the brand as well to help lift everything that we're doing. So those are key. And then there's amplification. Like, it's great to have a core community, but the brand itself needs to be bigger than that core community in order for it to survive and be the aspirational thing that you want it to be, right? You want people around the world to be like, that's really cool. I wish I had an ape. I'm going to buy a t-shirt. I'm going to come to the party. I'm going to do the thing, whatever, and aspire to own an ape, buy a mutant, own an ape, whatever, right? And so we have to build that for longevity of the holders. If we only focus on the holders, then over time, what happens is it just contracts on itself. So it's kind of, that's the triangle, right? It's like, there's the core community. Are we really delivering for them? Are we able to amplify things, which raises all boats? And can we find a way to get some ROI on it for Yuga as well?
And then we mentioned gaming like very, very briefly. The people want to know, and I'm curious as well, Jeff, what's the status and update with, this is coming, the Otherside. You knew this was going to come.
Yeah. I mean, look, the thing with Otherside is you saw it. Garga, is really deep in the trenches with Herman and the Improbable team on bringing that to life. Trying to do, more events more frequently, like the town hall that he just did. ODK is going to be in the hands of a few passionate builders, in the community first to kind of dog food it and get the kinks worked out, and then get it into everyone's hands, right? So it's, has it taken longer than everyone wanted to get to that point? Sure. Were the expectations of how fast it could go maybe outsized from what it takes to build that? Yes. And so now we're kind of meeting in the middle of like, let's get back to a pace and a transparency with Otherside. And I think that's what you're seeing. I don't touch Otherside that much, to be honest. Like, we did Apes Come Home as part of the BAYC thing. The 3D models were created by the Otherside team, and then we were able to distribute those to the apes. But like, we keep pretty focused on BAYC so that Otherside, can keep really focused on Otherside. Yeah. I mean, the community will say like, oh, the two things are linked, right? Like Otherside doesn't exist without BAYC, and that's very, very true on one level, but on the building level, like it has to be built, and then like when it's ready, we will come over in full force and start populating it. Yeah.
Jeff, do you think that the expectations from the community were blown out of proportion? Like it's almost like they were expecting the next fucking GTA to be built in like 6 months. Like, bro, GTA 6 has been taking about 11 years. Like,
yeah, I don't want to say that. Do I think they were blown out of proportion or pushed out of proportion or whatever? Like, I just think that in this space, things move fast, and people have an expectation that things are going to move fast. People also have an expectation, like, it doesn't matter if it's us or it's Pudgies or it's Oni Force back in the day. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. When you put out a thing and you say, I'm going to do a thing, then like everyone's imaginations run wild with what that thing can be and what it's, and right. That's human nature. Like, you tell me you're doing a thing, I'm going to be like, oh, this is and then you have to like come back down to reality of like what the thing is actually going to be. And that's really hard in this kind of space. A lot of people don't have some of that experience. And even those that do get carried away with it and caught up in it. I do too. I mean, look, I find it even like, if I have a creative idea for something, I'll take music videos as a perfect example. You have a creative vision for what it's going to be. You lay that out. You get the best team together. You get the best DP. You get out there. Everything goes perfectly, right? Even if it does go perfectly, you get all the footage back. You assemble and edit with an editor, and you sit down in front of it and you go, "Fuck,
it's not good enough.
It's not good enough. It doesn't look right. It doesn't." Because like even though you're on set watching the thing get made, in your head, you still had this blown out of proportion thing that you were trying to create. Because like we're all human and we're all making things with the things that we have, the tools that we have in our hands. So I think that's what it was more than anything on the community side. It's just everybody getting really, really excited and really passionate about it and wanting it to come right now, like a kid at Christmas. And the reality is, like Garga would say all the time, and the team would say all the time, like, this is hard. This stuff takes a long time.
Yeah, you guys, all of us that work in the industry, we're also startups. We are. I say this all the time. We are startups because we're under 7 years and the team size and all that stuff. But we also are technically publicly traded, not publicly traded, but we do have assets on the market that people give a shit about, as well as community members that have to be attentive to those things. So technically, publicly traded plus a startup, you got the two fucking worst things possible. Teams that it is. It's the two toughest things to do in one fucking area, which is finance and tech. And now we're like, let's go make something of this in 2 years.
Well, I'll say this. I hear I know what you mean by the publicly traded thing. Just to be clear, like, it's not, but
correct.
But
people give a shit about the price.
People give a shit. They give a shit because they have maybe invested a bunch of money, or maybe not. But
which is not your guys' fault at all. Which is nobody's fault but their own at all.
Yeah. But they're connected, and they have a voice. And we give them a voice because we want them to have a voice, because that's the whole thing, right? It's like we build together as a community. But yeah, it's challenging because the pressure of it is different than the pressure of just running a startup. Because all of a sudden you have a lot of voices coming at you at once. And if the FUD starts to hit and the sentiment turns and you're trying to just be head down and build, it can be really, really difficult, and you can feel sort of reactive to that. And I think Garga mentioned that too. And when he took over, I keep referencing him because we mentioned him earlier, but he's driving a lot of this, that you don't want the tail to wag the dog. And sometimes that's what happens. You start reacting rather than believing in the thing that you're building and knowing that people are going to like it, because you've already kind of done the research and you've been deep in the community, and just getting to the point of releasing a thing, So when we react, it goes badly because we lose our way, and then we feel like we're chasing. When we're instead, trying to stay a couple steps ahead of where the meta is and what people want, and we're very connected, then we're in a really good place. I would say that for anybody, not just you.
Yeah, of course. You want to be proactive in all approaches in life. Being reactive means you're playing defense, and defense sometimes isn't the best thing to be playing. From your personal scope, your personal contacts as creative director with BAYC, BAYC for the LOs out there.
Jeff, gonna love this.
Hopefully he does. What is your personal litmus test for product development, creative development when pushing something out to know that, okay, guys, this is good, let's fucking ship it, versus now we need another fucking 24 hours of work on this thing? What's your litmus test for that? Because you probably, Jeff, you probably oversee a lot of stuff, and you probably have final call on a lot of things too. So what's your test? I'm interested.
Yeah, that's a really good question too. There's a little bit of an unspoken, once you've passed all the QA and the thing is rock solid, and you know what I mean? You've gone through all the technical requirements of something, because we're doing a lot of digital stuff, right?
Yeah.
But even opening Ape Fest up, knowing you can open the doors because all the technical stuff is laid out, you got to get there. That's a prerequisite. But then it's a little bit of an unspoken, it's a gut thing, I think, with a team that's gelled, because you're does it feel right? If it doesn't feel right to us, then it's probably not going to feel right outside. Even if it does feel right to us, then sometimes, we will go get some opinions. We will bring some trusted people in to take a look at something. I don't know how to explain that though, because it's not a necessary, on the creative side, it's not necessarily a tangible thing. You're kind of it's just a feeling this just doesn't quite feel right. And sometimes you don't know exactly what it is, or sometimes you do, and you can go right into that. But sometimes it's we got to reapproach this visual, or this UI piece just doesn't quite hit, and it's making me feel it's not sticky enough. That sort of thing.
Is it kind of like going up, taking a walk, going out to dinner, and going back to it? Is one of those things? You need a new fresh set of eyes, new eyes, second opinion, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's always really helpful. I think I do a lot of my calls on walks,
Smart.
because I like to just kind of like be out, hear the birds, like um, break out of like this seat, you know? Um, yeah, I think that's part of it, having space. But when it comes to like the litmus test of something, it's like, I'll frame it like this. I used to do album packaging, and a lot. That was what one of the things my agency did, quite a bit of. And you would put together a piece of art, a package, and whatever, and um, it sometimes just wouldn't feel right, and you couldn't really put your finger on why. It just didn't feel like it was a finished piece of art that you would find in a record store. Like, it just, for whatever reason. And then you would go through and you'd be like, why doesn't it? And we've spent so much time on this. It's really kind of gone through its paces. It's really beautiful. Why does it feel that way? And you'd realize that the spine numbers, like the catalog numbers and the copyright block on the bottom and the label logos that needed to be there, weren't there yet. And when you put that stuff on, then all of a sudden, like, subconsciously, holy shit, this feels like a finished thing. And it's that level of like the details, the bits and pieces, the sort of like rounding it out and getting those tiny elements right. And you just have this feeling of like, it's ready.
That's interesting. The little
I know
thing.
that doesn't make a lot of sense outside of a creative's head, but let me do this. Let me use a concrete example. So the current Ape Fest branding that we just released, we went through so many iterations of that. We started from a place of like Lisbon, right? Lisbon's got these tiles everywhere.
Yeah.
Lisbon's got like a grit to it, actually, because it's so old and it's seaside, and so like everything's kind of worn, you know. And so we were like, okay, let's lean into like some of this photography that I had taken while I was over there scouting. Let's lean into that grit. Let's kind of tell the story of Lisbon in that way. And it felt really good. And then objectively, we sort of like came away from it and then came back to it. And Garga and Figgy and Wiley were like, this kind of feels like something that anybody could do. Like, what's the BAYC spin of this?
Fuck.
Right? And yeah, that was our reaction. We're like, fuck.
We're about to lose our jobs. Fuck.
And then, but they were right. And that was the thing, that we weren't quite ready for it to go out, but we couldn't put our finger on it. And we needed somebody who hadn't been working on it with us. And that's the collaboration piece, to look at it and go, here's the thing. And so then we're like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. So we scrapped all of that. And we started to think about like, oh, we're in this old convent. What does that mean? We're a club. We're kind of a fucking cult. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, this stuff all starts to feel like BAYC. This is weird. This is irreverent. We got sardine heads. We got seances. We got like, and we're like, this feels really fun. And all of a sudden you got that feeling inside where you're like, this is it. And so as the design team started to go down that path, it got better and better and better as they were refining and refining and refining. And then we were ready to release. You just felt like you were ready to release it.
It's great context. I mean, it's
the first stuff was beautiful. It was gorgeous, but it was like, yeah, they were right. It wasn't
on brand. Yeah, it wasn't on brand. It's gonna speak to you. It didn't speak to you. And I respect that a ton, Jeff. I have to ask, and you might not be the best person for this, but I do want to ask anyways. Jeff, what was the thought process of the entire team for the MA merge and acquisition, for those that don't know, of Moonbirds? Like what was the play here? Like, you obviously not your field, but I'm just curious.
Yeah,
you're your team.
Yeah, I mean, look, incredible talent on the Moonbirds team. Unbelievable talent within the team. Now, I'm not talking about Kevin. I don't. People have their feelings about Kevin. Kevin's not involved, but the team is really fucking awesome. The community, the Moonbirds community, is really fucking awesome, and the art is really good. And the Proof Collective and what they're doing with art really, really complements what punks are doing, and what we're trying to do on the art side of things. So I think that's a lot of it. It just felt like a good compliment. especially as we start to move into the other side and you start to see the burbs like, get made in 3D and it becomes this like really cute character in Otherside. I think that's the majority of it. But again, I wasn't part of any of it.
Yeah, no, I know you weren't.
I found out when everybody found out. It was like, oh, we did that. Okay,
we did that.
And
wow.
Then we were able to get in the weeds with the team and just be like, oh my god, like we're already working with them, across company on different things because like you've got Colin, who's now the creative director for Moonbirds, who is just an incredible storyteller and illustrator. He's just, like phenomenal. And you could go down the line on the team, like Eli, who's been putting together all the proof stuff, the collective stuff with the art drops. It just really knows what he's doing and gets that world. So, and Maggie, who was putting together all their events, like their events have been like really top notch for like low dollar, top quality. And she's been able to pull off a lot with a little. And so when you add that into what we're doing, like at Yuga in general, like all of a sudden, it just has kind of amplified what we're able to do overall.
When I saw this on the timeline, Jeff, I initially thought about the royalties because I know that Moonbirds had acquired, I think, the most or one of the most royalties in terms of, revenue from an NFT brand since, inception, you want to call it inception. Yeah. And I know the royalty thing here and there, but I realized, they have a partnership with Magic Eden. Magic Eden supports royalties, right? And I'm like, maybe there's a revenue play here in 6 months, 12 months that the NFT don't see because their business acumen's at zero. Is that reasonable to say? Like this is maybe a business revenue.
I think it is. I think it's reasonable to say that there's a lot of upside on Moonbirds. Yeah. The where they had kind of fallen to and what is actually there. There's a lot of upside on that. They're trying to deal with the CCO thing right now. I'm not involved in that, but they're making some moves to kind of help with that because the community asked for it, and the community never wanted that to happen. So I think for sure. I mean, it's a business, right?
Was this Daniel's play? Was this under Daniel? No. Okay. Because I thought it was, and I was like, Andrew, think like Daniel for a second. Why does this matter other than what they're saying on Twitter? I'm like, royalties. Fucking royalties. I'm like, it's money. You need money to survive in business. I don't care what they say.
You do need money to run a business.
It helps.
Not having royalties does make things harder.
Correct.
And when your business is built on collecting royalties, then and they're not there, and then years go by, you're like,
and then Lucas said this too, and I'm paraphrasing. Lucas said when him and Peter bought Penguins, he said for the first 6 months or 9 months, they were still eating royalties. He's like, if we didn't have those, he's like, I don't think we'd be here today.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what people, I'm not going to say like, oh, woe is us for not collecting royalties anymore, because that's a whatever. But people see the money that was invested into Yuga and the royalties that were collected up front, when royalties were a thing, and they go, oh, the war chest is huge, but you got to remember, like, we're building a giant metaverse. It's very expensive. We're putting on huge events. We're doing lots and lots of things with that take a lot of capital, and so when you go down the road on that, you're like, it when they dry up. Or, when you're no longer collecting royalties and they were one of your revenue streams, you have to figure out a way to replace that revenue stream.
Yeah, quick.
A business has to make money to survive. That's what it's for. It's not a nonprofit,
Yeah, correct. Even nonprofits, Jeff, make money.
Even nonprofits make money. The CEOs of nonprofits get paid.
They get not a whole bunch, but they make money. So it's capitalism. Businesses built on the basis of capitalism. For those that don't know.
And that's the other thing too. I think that gets really interesting in the space where, like, someone spends a lot of money on something and maybe they overextend themselves and they get very upset at the project, but they didn't buy the thing from the project. They bought the thing from somebody else on secondary.
Correct.
And so the project at this point didn't collect any money on that sale. And so it's just a weird dynamic because you're like, but we're still doing a lot. It just like you know what I mean? Like it's it's not even like you bought the car at a car dealership and then you want to take it back. I mean, a car dealership would never do that.
No.
Like, too bad you bought the car. It's not even that. You bought it from like a third, like the fourth owner, and then you brought it back to the dealership and they're like, what? This car hasn't been here for 10 years.
Jeff, you mentioned the Clubhouse.
Yeah.
What's the status on that? Are you excited about it? And what is your contribution to it?
So incredibly excited about it. Could not be more excited about something. My contribution to it is I'm overseeing it. I mean, with a team. We've got a big team on it, but I'm overseeing what it's going to become with that team. The status on it is more will be revealed soon in terms of how the community can be involved in what we're doing. Building something like that also takes time. It didn't start right away, and there were lots of other things that were being done. The gaming side of things started, to take a lot of resources. So there was a bit of a like, okay, let's turn our focus back over to the Clubhouse and start to make this thing a reality. So we've had to spin that engine up, but now like we're cooking right now, and I'm really excited. What I'm most excited about, I'm excited about having a space that we can all come to. I don't live in Miami. I'm in LA. So, I wish it was in LA, right? Like everybody wishes it was in their town. Yeah. But Miami makes sense because it's number one, crypto, but number two,
future hub.
The founders are from Miami, and also like the lore is the swamp outside of, like
I didn't think about that shit. That's
true. Yeah. Too. I mean, like Miami just makes sense. And we have a ton of holders down there, and it's great for people in Europe to come over to and whatever. But what I'm most excited about beyond the physicality of the space and the fun that we're going to get to have with it is the way that I think we're going to be able to involve the community in its continued building, in decision making, in transparency, and what's going on, what's happening. So that's all going to be coming soon. Illa and Baron and the CM team, Boris and Electro and Mr. ETH, and are putting together like really great ways for the community to get involved. I think everybody's going to be not only stoked with what it is, but like it's going to be a lot of fun getting there.
I'm excited for it too, Jeff. I'll be honest. And in Miami, for those that don't know, it's a great fucking place. And I'm not there. I'm in Toronto. Toronto's probably the worst place, but Miami's a great fucking place.
Great though. Toronto's nothing.
No, Jeff. Have you been here recently?
No, it's been a long time. I had some good pho there a long time ago.
It is not what it used to be. The fun you had is gone. It's fucking all gone. It's so fucking gone. So
it's not true everywhere though. I'm in LA.
I hear that a lot too.
Must be great in LA. I'm like, I want to get the fuck out of here.
Where would you go? You seem like Jeff. You seem like a Texas kind of guy.
Really? That's funny. Maybe it's just the mustache. Maybe Austin, but we've thought about Portland, Seattle, Austin, Nashville.
Oh shit!
But the problem is
you wouldn't go to Miami with the rest of the guys.
So I grew up in Florida, and Florida for me is weird.
Is it too much of home? Is it too much of home?
It's a little too much of home. I left Florida as fast as I could, and so when I go back now, it's like a very weird experience for me. I like it a lot now, but I don't think I could live there. It's just not my thing. I need to live by the beach, but I need to live by waves. And so, Portland and Seattle are kind of out for that. Austin, Nashville are kind of out for that. So I think about Hawaii all the time. Like I love Kauai. Arizona? No, it's too hot. Yeah. I want temperate. Like, yeah, maybe I don't even know. Maybe I should just be a nomad. I should just be like pure
some guys
nomad.
do that. You have the luxury of doing it. It's crypto. You can do whatever you like. It's crypto.
I know.
Jeff, Colorado?
Maybe. Yeah.
I've heard some good fucking things about Colorado. Like some good things.
The thing that I don't like is heat and humidity, or like heat or humidity. And
I'm with.
So I grew up in Florida. I moved from Florida to Vegas, so straight into heat. And then when I landed in LA, when I finally got to LA, I was like, oh, it's temperate, right? But not anymore. Like with global warming or whatever, it's like completely 96 degrees all summer over here on the east side. So,
that's crazy. I don't know if you've been in Toronto in the summer, but it is fucking sticky.
Well, it's like Chicago, right? It's like gross and sticky, and
it's the worst thing. It is the worst thing.
We just all need to live nomadic lifestyles. I mean, that's how humans evolved. Like, why have we settled down into homes? We should just be.
Jeff, my buddies are in Colombia. A lot of them are in Colombia right now.
Yeah, amazing. I was going to go spend a month in Portugal. I'm not going to do it now. I'm probably going to do it later, but I was going to go for a month in Lisbon in like July, and
That's a good call. That's a good call.
it's great.
Are you
Like Portugal,
Portuguese?
I'm not Portuguese. No, a mentor of mine is part Portuguese and got his citizenship over there. And
Ah,
he said, I mean, it's just, you know, I was there to tech scout. That was the first time I'd been to Lisbon in Portugal. And it's like fucking gorgeous and like affordable. And the people are warm and the water is warm and blue. And it's like, you guys got it, you know?
Jeff, I do also want to ask about the conversation of like Ape Fest. It was Hong Kong. Now it's where's it now, Jeff? It's where's the
Lisbon,
next one?
Portugal.
So it's literally where we just mentioned.
Yeah.
What's the strategy for having them in Hong Kong other than Lisbon? Is it like target
Yeah.
areas you guys want to hit? Is it growth metrics? Like what is it? Why these
Yeah.
areas?
There's a few different reasons for it every time. And part of it is the global community, and we want to be able to reach the global community where they are. US is our biggest holder base. Outside of that, Europe and APAC region in general are our two secondary ones. We wanted to go over to Asia because we were seeing a lot of activity over there, and all of those apes. Some of the European apes had been able to make it over to New York, but a lot of the Asian apes had not been able to. So we wanted to bring it to them. That was one part. We wanted to bring it to a place that was really crypto friendly and where we could like our energy there could be a center of gravity amongst the other sort of like crypto and regulatory stuff that they were doing. And so Hong Kong was that place because they've been doing a lot, both on the government level and, you know, just like startup level in crypto and Web3. And then we kind of always want to be on a port city because we're a yacht club. So, you know, Hong Kong is a port city, right? So the way Lisbon happened and why we're going to Lisbon this year, you know, we did a survey at the beginning of the year, and Europe was the number one thing. It was like, you know, it was like 18%, and then everything else was pretty well below that because it was pretty spread out where people wanted to see it. And we were just noticing that the European apes like were not, a lot of them weren't able to make it to Asia, and we hadn't been there yet. And so it was like, do we go to like Berlin and do like some crazy like industrial party thing, which could be really fun? Or do we give everybody kind of like not resort, but like kind of getaway vibes? And
Loungy.
that was Portugal. It was just like, we're going to come and just like have just a chill ass time, you know? It'll be a fun party, but it's going to be a chill time too.
Is there the incentive to have another one in the US?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, we talk about 2025, like where do we want to have Ape Fest? Like Miami is on the radar for that.
Vegas? You guys want to do Vegas?
We've talked about Vegas for sure.
Vegas would be crazy.
Vegas would be crazy. I mean, there's so many great cities that you could do it in. I don't think we'll be back with it in New York anytime soon because we've done like 2 there now, and we want to spread that out. You know, LA, like it'd be great to do something around the LA area too. So yeah, I mean, you know, Ape Fest is one of those things like it is now something that everyone looks forward to. We look forward to it. It's where we get to sort of flex as a community. It's where we get to have like just an incredible time. All the attention gets focused on us, but also everybody just like forms these bonds, and what we see come out of them is fucking powerful. Like businesses have gotten started because of Ape Fests, like real businesses, you know, lifelong friendships have been made. Like people have gotten like there were a ton of people who came over to Hong Kong who had never traveled alone and did not have a passport. They got their first passport and traveled alone for the first time, and then went on to like spend a month in Asia.
That's crazy.
And had like the most eye-opening experience of their lives. You know, like that's what they've come up and told me. And so like being able to influence someone's life beyond just these silly monkey JPEGs, you know, that's a big deal, I think.
You guys probably don't fucking spend like marketing dollars at all in Web3, right? Like there's no need to do it, right? In our industry.
No, I mean, yeah, like paid marketing and stuff like that. We don't do it.
And it must feel good, right? Because these guys are like, everybody is struggling to get attention and grasp attention, especially after the way it's been fragmented. You guys are in such a good place. You don't even need it.
It's funny because I laugh because when we talk to Web2 companies, like brands who want to partner on something, or you know, like a new a new vendor or whatever, they're like, okay, so we'll do like some paid marketing and this and that. And we're like, no, we're going to tweet once. And they're like, what are you talking about? And we're like, well, that's how this works for us right now. That we tweet once and then it just like, then spaces pop up about it and the whole fucking timeline floods. And on one level, that's great. And it's super helpful. Like anybody would kill for that in any other industry. But on the other level, it doesn't break out of Web3. It only stays in Web3. And if you're marketing, if you're talking to the same people over and over and over again, there's only so much you can do in terms of like selling a new thing or engaging in a new way. And so we do need to look beyond. How do we break out of that? And that's probably going to take some form of marketing.
But you guys already broke out 2 years ago. You guys already broke out. Why do you think it didn't sustain as much as we thought it was going to?
I think, the NFT like bubble, as people like out on the outside of Web3 like to call it, burst, like we went into the bear. The question I get all the time from like Normie friends or normies that I run into at like my son's baseball games, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I work for an NFT company, and they're like, is that still happening?
That's crazy, man.
And I'm like, yeah, like, well, I work for Bored Ape Yacht Club and this is what we're doing. And they're like, what? They're like blown away that those NFT things are still happening. And so I think it's, look, I look at what Pudgies are doing with, retail. I look at what Azuki's doing with anime. I look at what we're trying to do, breaking out with gaming and metaverse and brand. If you can break out of Web3 and amplify beyond in this now, right? Not in bull when everybody was like, all eyes were on it.
Yeah.
You're gonna see longevity in brand building. We're in, what would be called like the trough of disillusionment in tech, right? It's like there's the big bubble, there's all the interest, and then you drop fucking straight into it, and the build back out of it is really slow. And I'm not talking about like crypto bull bear. I'm talking about like technology curve, like the curve of I think it's like Meyer's law or whatever. And I've seen it over and over and over again my entire career. I was deep into VR. I was deep into AR. When I was deep into VR, people were pumping millions and millions of dollars into making content. And like that bubble was so fucking like insane. And then it popped and no one cared about VR. No one wanted to talk about it. And now we're like on the upswing of that, with all the new headsets and, everything that's coming. So, but it's slow. And so all of these things happen at different rates. And the NFT one was just like really hot, really fast, came dropping really, really fast. And is now on its own timeline to come back out of that. And I think it divorces from crypto. I think that's kind of controversial, but I think what ends up happening is, yes, it's powered by blockchain, and yes, crypto is probably the way that you're still buying things. But I think like what a brand is and what a utility is and what value is for NFT projects in these clubs and these communities over time becomes bigger than just the crypto piece of it.
I would agree with you. Jeff, I have one more question, and then we can get your final thoughts on this. Before I answer the question, though, I said this before, and I'll say it again. You probably agree with this. I think there's been a lot of progress, but the fact that you, I, and everyone else we're so in the fucking weeds on the day-to-day, we don't see the needle getting pushed because we don't have a bird's eye view. Whereas if people looked at us 3 years ago up until now that are not in it, they'll probably say, yeah, you guys have had some progress. But like us, because we're so involved, we don't see the significance the way that, like, how can I say this? When your friend is losing weight and you see him every day, you don't know he's losing weight until like fucking 6 months later when he has a fucking six pack and like there's honeys on his shoulder. Right. Yeah. But like if you're now someone who's only seen him every 12 months, like, bro, you look fucking really good. And like, yeah, it took me a while, but we're here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think that it's hard to see, it's hard to lift your head up when we talk about building, right? Like that's what everybody's doing in the space. We're just building. It's hard to lift your head up and see like where you've been and where you're going. And honestly, that's what we've been focused on this year so far, has been locking in the execution teams so that the leaders in the company can look up and look around and see where we're going and start to redirect, to get to a place where like, if we can see it and we can feel it, then others, will see it in a big way. Right.
That's very powerful. Jeff, last question. And you mentioned one of my favorite words. You mentioned the B word, brand. Jeff, what is brand to you, and how would you quantify it?
When I think of brand, I think of stuff that I've always gravitated to in my life: skate companies, streetwear companies, toy companies, these things that become part of your life. I don't think about brand in the same, like that. That's the world that I come from and in. I don't think about brand like, corporate brand stuff. When I'm talking about that kind of brand, what brand is really something that integrates into your life and becomes a part of your existence, becomes part of your identity, becomes part of your day to day. If a brand truly transcends, that's what happens with it. I think David Horvath, who did Ugly Dolls, we had a great conversation with him the other day, and I want to give him credit for this. He talked about holding the brand in your hands, and holding things in your hands that allow you to feel connection to it. And I think the best brands do that. When you look at Apple, when you look at the way that they've built culture around, what would be just a hardware brand, like that's a true brand, not just a hardware company. So I think brand for me is the culture around it, the culture that's created by the exchange with in Web 2, you would say consumer, and Web 3, you would say the community, right?
Yes.
That symbiotic relationship that allows it to become much bigger than just a product or, just an idea.
Jeff, I appreciate your time. I will give you the mic. Final thoughts, Jeff. Anything you want to let the people know? Things you're up to, personal life, business life, things you're excited about on both. Jeff, you got the mic. Final words.
This mustache is going. I'm going to grow the beard back. I'm not quite feeling it. I'll say that. You caught me at like right in between where.
Perfect.
What I think, I'm really excited still for the space overall. Despite how hard it's been for people over the last year or more, despite like the sort of crunchiness of like getting the gears turning again in the space, I'm really excited for the future of what blockchain and what NFT projects and all of this stuff can be. I think, if people feel that same way, stick around, build, pick up a shovel, do whatever you can do with it, whatever community you're in, whatever project, you want to make, like it's still pretty wide open. And as our life becomes more and more digital, this stuff is just going to permeate it, So it's like, I don't know, man. I think I've been having a lot of fun. I hope other people are having fun too. Keep it light, build some shit.
Very well said, Jeff. Once again, I appreciate your time. Everybody, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. Guys, we'll see you in the next episode of Andrew Asks How podcast. Thank you, Jeff, again. Take care, everybody. Ciao for now.